This is early June 2025. This is an updated video that I'm making about an assault incident that happened to me personally on April the 1st of 2025 at this facility, Arundel Medical Center. I came in on the 31st of March by ambulance with heart failure to this emergency room. Stayed in the emergency room for a while, then was put in one of their side rooms. I'm just going to call it a triage room for lack of a better word. I was there overnight. The shift that was there at 7 p.m. left. New shift came in till 7 a.m. 7 a.m. on the 1st of April. New shift came in. New nurses, new techs. And I was in a private little side room. It was just part of this emergency room. And there was a TV there. I was hooked to monitoring equipment because they were running tests since the night before, blood tests, x-rays, all this sort of thing. I wouldn't allow them to do a catheterization. The only thing I would allow them to do is a CT scan. The cardiologist that I had at the time was unhappy with that because he didn't get his surgical money. But anyhow, I spent the night, and then next morning around 7 or so, new shift of nurses came in. I made the mistake of turning the TV on, and I made the mistake of leaving it facing the window to the room, which didn't have a curtain on it. I wasn't able to get up and adjust the TV because I was hooked to monitoring equipment, all these connections to my chest and everything, and they were still doing tests. So I turned the TV, and I like watching Fox News because they don't lie. And nurse that came in around lunchtime noticed that I had Fox on. She was very disturbed about it. It was obvious, and she got angry. And she attended to me, and as she was getting ready to leave, the room was very warm, and I asked her very politely, said, "Can you turn down the temperature just a little bit? It's too warm for me, you know?" And she said, "I'm not familiar with the thermostat, but I'll see what I can do." And she looked at the TV again in disgust, and then she turned around to fool with the thermostat and quickly left the room. Well, within 15, 20 minutes from then, the room started getting really cold. It was freezing in there. About 30 minutes later, somebody from their admitting department came in with a clipboard to get some information about my insurance and so forth. As soon as she walked in, opened the door, she said, "My God, it's freezing in here." It was. And she was there less than a minute and was gone. And then about a half hour later, the same nurse who had turned the thermostat all the way to the lowest temperature, her name was Anna, A-N-N-A. She wasn't white, she wasn't black, I don't know what she was. But she poked her head in the door with a grin on her face and said, "Is it cool enough for you now in here?" And she knew what she had done. She reached in and tried to reset the thermostat through the door. That didn't work. So she came and fiddled with it and reset it back up. And she turned around and was very embarrassed. She had a red face. I said, "You did that on purpose, didn't you?" And she hustled out of the room like she saw a ghost. About a half hour to an hour later, a different nurse came in, a younger girl. She said, "I'm now your nurse." I said, "Where's the other nurse?" She said, "Well, she's not on this floor anymore." I asked her twice. I said, "I want to see that lady's supervisor." She didn't respond. She left, came back an hour later. I said, I'm going to remind you, I want to see the supervisor of the previous nurse." She said, "What's it all about?" I said, "It's none of your business." I said, "Just get me her supervisor." My intent at the time was just to get this on record, what this person had done out of malice. She was unhappy with me because she didn't like the news I was watching, and she was going to teach me a lesson. So nothing ever happened. Nobody ever came in. I thought about it. I said, well, these people are serving me food, giving me medicine. I'm going to let this go for now. I did file a complaint later on. Well, there was a record of it too, because that information didn't leave, the floor. It was there floating around. They just didn't want to address it. All I wanted at the time was that nurse to come in and admit that what she had done and give me an apology. That didn't happen. So when I got home, I think on the 2nd of April, I think, or maybe it was the evening of the 1st. Doesn't matter. About a week later, I get a call from this organization. Some woman calls me and says, understand you had an issue at the emergency room. I said, yes. She said, and we talked for about 10 minutes. She said, well, what are you looking for? I said, the only thing I'm looking for is an admission of guilt that she did what she did and an apology. I said, she judged me because she didn't like the news I was watching and she was going to teach me a lesson. I'm 77 years old. She may have been half my age. Anyhow, she said, I'll look into it. That's all that happened. About a week or two later, I get a form letter in mail, a little bit of lip service that says basically, we follow procedures, we have guidelines, blah, blah, blah. A bunch of nothing is what it was. So I said, okay, they don't want to address this. They want to ignore me. So here I am. Here's my videos, and I'm not going to let this go.